Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. Yep, I crashed my Avata 2. Then I had to do the long walk of shame to retrieve it off a barely frozen lake. But I live to tell about it. Let me share what happened and some learnings. I've owned my Avata 2 since April of 2024, so less than a year. And honestly, I haven't used it nearly as much as I would have liked. It was great at the tank event that I filmed in the summer and super fun to fly, but I've been busy with other stuff and have found that the Neo to be much handier for flying around, even for FPV stuff. So on the morning of December 20th, I decided enough was enough. I decided to dust off the Avata and give it a little exercise. I charged up the batteries, checked the firmware levels, all good, and prepared for a flight. Now, I live on a lake in Ontario, Canada, and there were strange-looking patterns on the frozen ice, so getting some cool footage of those was my objective. It was very cloudy with a temperature of -7 Celsius, or about 19 degrees Fahrenheit. The minimum temperature spec for the Avata 2 is -10 Celsius, so I wasn't too worried about the cold. Wind was a bit gusty, as we'll soon see, but the nominal wind speed was only around 14 kilometers per hour. So again, nothing to be particularly worried about from a temperature or wind perspective. I started out over the ground to warm up the batteries, to make sure everything was working properly, and most importantly, to refamiliarize myself with FPV flight. I even did a few flips just for fun. So far, so good. No warnings or anything out of the ordinary. So off I went across the lake, staying low to catch the details of these ice patterns. The lake had been frozen for only a few days at this point, so the ice was maybe a few inches thick at most. I certainly hadn't seen any ice fishermen out there, and they're out there as soon as they can, so it likely wasn't thick enough to walk on at this point. So what we're seeing here are cracks in the ice, probably due to thermal stresses, and water that has seeped up through those cracks to the surface, melting the skim coating of snow on top a few feet on either side of the cracks. It's very cool to see, especially when you're zipping along down low. So, as you can see, I did a few barrel rolls and other flips just for fun and a couple of the new power loops, which are very cool. And by the way, you'll see that my altitude goes down to almost 4 meters at a few points. But remember, my launch point was up higher, about 4 meters above the ice surface. So my true altitude above the ice was never less than 8 meters, or about 25 feet. Plenty of room for those flips and loops. I was flying in normal mode, not sport or manual, and my maximum speed was around 30 kilometers per hour. So other than the loops and flips, I wasn't really flying very aggressively. But you'd probably notice that I was getting frequent high wind velocity warnings. And at one point, my signal strength dropped to a yellow warning, then red when the drone was only 250 meters away. So I headed back towards home and lowered my altitude a bit in an attempt to get into lighter winds and finish the flight. At 6 minutes and 24 seconds into my flight, with 58% battery still remaining, an altitude of about 12 meters, I did one last backflip. Suddenly, everything turned to crap. Looking at it afterwards, I could see the following in the last second of flight. My screen started to break up. I got a red no satellite warning. Then my GPS satellite indicator went yellow. Then the message impact detected, motor overloaded, and finally, the less than inspiring message, motors stopped, in a remarkably appropriate black color. So after changing my pants, I quickly attempted to reconnect to the drone. And sure enough, it connected immediately. And based on the camera view, it was upright. But every attempt I made to take off ended in a short hop, then some weird error, then a crash. First time, it had reacquired its GPS lock just fine, but the altitude was all over the place, starting at 0 and rising to 13 meters before I even tried to take off. Then it said there was an impact. On the second attempt, the altitude was straightened out and was fine, but it just wouldn't take off at all. Things looked better on the third attempt, but then all satellites were lost immediately after takeoff. Next, it said that a prop might be broken. And so on it went over and over. Now, the crash happened straight out front from my home, about 100 meters off the shore. So I could see the drone sitting on the ice, laughing at me. Using binoculars, I could see that each of these little hops I was making was actually bringing the drone closer to shore, a few inches at a time. So before it got dark, I figured I'd continue the hopping as long as I could. Over the next 45 minutes, I made a total of 58 hops. Yeah, 58. And I might have moved, well, about 5 meters. Not a tremendous amount, but at least in the right direction. On the last one, I got a fatal error that there was insufficient battery power to take off. So that was the end of that. Apparently 30% is the hard stopping point for a takeoff. So my next move was to launch my Mini 4 Pro to do some reconnaissance. Using the Mini 4, I was able to confirm the distance offshore as almost exactly 100 meters. And I have cool footage of the hopping trail, but really I couldn't make out any details of the damage. And I was actually worried that if I got down too low for a better shot, that the Mini 4 would happily decide to land. And that could be bad if I ended up on top of the Avata too. It could tip over the Mini. So I flew home and reconsidered my options. Now, I definitely could not go out on the ice. It just wasn't thick enough at this point anyway. It was too far to throw a grappling hook or anything like that, and I didn't want to try to grab it with another drone. The last time I tried that, it ended very badly. So I checked the weather forecast. The good news was that it was going to be very cold, well below freezing for the next 2 days. But a heavy snowfall was expected on December 23rd, 3 days away. And that was also the day I was planning on heading out of town for Christmas. Now, if it snowed more than even a couple of inches, I figured I would never see the drone again. On the night of the 22nd, the temperature dropped to minus 20 Celsius overnight, and in the morning it was still minus 20. I made the call to head out around 8:30 in the morning, and of course I videotaped it. I'll chop out the boring bits, but I do want to emphasize that this was probably pretty stupid, despite all the precautions that you'll see that I took. So don't do this yourself.
Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. It's a beautiful winter day. It's sunny and bright, almost no wind. Minus 20 Celsius. That's kind of a negative, but yeah, it's beautiful. So I'm actually standing on the ice right now, just offshore, and I'm heading out to get my drone that I lost a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of days ago. Sorry, it's just out there somewhere. I don't know whether you probably can't see it. There's no way you can see it. So I'm heading out to retrieve it. So I'm wearing a life jacket. I'm warmly dressed. I have 2 screwdrivers in my pocket in case I go through to grab things. I'll be checking with this ice chopper thing, and as you can see, the ice is extremely solid, but I'll be checking. Hopefully it's over 4 inches all the way out. I did see somebody out on the ice about a kilometer down yesterday, and it was minus 20 overnight. I'm also going to be carrying this 8-foot pole that has the hooks on the end. So I'll be carrying that just in case. And of course I'm filming it. Why wouldn't I do that? I think that's it. I do have my phone with me as well. Not that that's going to help me if I fall through, but there you go. Yeah. Oh, and I have a rope right there. It's attached there. It's probably only like 50 feet or so in length, but I'll be holding that just kind of looped around my arm just in case, because I figure if I can get through the first little bit, then I'm sure it'll be fine the rest of the way. Famous last words. Anyway, let's get the show on the road. So I did hear the ice do a big kind of a cracking sound a few minutes ago. But I think that's normal thermal expansion. It's kind of hollow sounding. There's a crack there, but it seems very secure. The ice is black, which is perfect. The last thing you want is white ice, so to speak. That's ice that has air bubbles in it. Oh, I heard a noise, but it's just my boots on the squeaky ice. I am at least halfway there now. What I'm doing, but I'm doing this all the way along. And there's the drone. Chunk of the propeller. There I am with the drone. I don't know whether you can see it. Yay! You can see it's funny. It's the way it's covered in frost. 2 props broken. Prop guard broken on the one side. I don't see any other specific damage. Battery's still in there.
So after getting inside, I dried the drone off over a heat vent and had a good look at it. The major damage consisted of a big chunk missing from the front propeller guard, and a piece of the antenna was inside, kind of flapping around, and 2 broken props on the opposite side. The top hull plate was bulging out a bit, there was a small crack on the rear prop guard, and the SD card cover had popped open, thankfully with the SD card still inside. Now, I'm sorry, I really should have taken more pictures and maybe some more video, but I had to get on the road. It was Christmas. What with travels and so on, I wasn't able to do anything more until December 27th. Since I had purchased DJI Refresh, I raised a ticket. They provided a UPS shipping label for free, and I shipped it out on the 28th. 5 days later, I received a phone call and an email from the repair center indicating that they had a quote. I could have it repaired for $102 US or use one of my refresh replacements for $49 US. The DJI Refresh program allows 2 replacements per year, so I went with that, $49 US. I received a replacement, refurbished drone, but a new battery on January 6th, only 10 days later, end to end, including New Year's and weekends. Astonishing. And within hours of me actually receiving the package, I got a phone call from the DJI Repair Center asking if I had received it and if I had had a chance to test it out. Pretty darn good service, in my opinion. So what can we learn from all this? Well, first of all, it is not worth risking your life to retrieve a drone, even if it does have cool footage on it. I was dumb. The DJI Refresh program would have replaced the drone for $49 whether I had sent it in or not. And second, be mindful of flying in cold, windy weather. Even if it is within the spec for the drone, it's putting a lot of stress on the motors, and a fall onto a hard surface from even 18 meters can severely damage your drone. The plastic is a lot more brittle when it's cold and clearly can crack really easily. Now, I'm not really sure what caused the failure and for the motors to stop, but I suspect there may have been some previous unseen damage, some little cracks or something from some other minor crash. And between the cold and all the flips and loops I was doing, something just gave way. There's a remote chance that I had a bird strike, but there's certainly nothing showing on the footage. Nothing obvious was flying around at the time of the crash, and I saw no bits of feathers or anything on the drone itself. So who knows? But probably the biggest learning, DJI Refresh. This is a program well worth the cost and incredibly fast, even over the holiday season. So there you go, my latest crazy adventure with drones. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Thanks for watching.